So you and I have known each other for a long time now, what, 14 years?
Man,
It's been that long. And he and I are roughly the same age. Kenny is a few months older than I am, I think almost a year.
Yeah,
About
71, I'll be 53 next month.
Yep. And so, yeah, a few months older. And so, Kenny, today, you know, Liam and I, who's my partner, can't be with us today. We go back and forth on episodes. And last week we talked about a topic. We talked about Christianity. And then prior to that, we talked about 401k. And today we thought we'd talk about wrestling, MMA, your career path, why it's important.
Right.
I met you when I started training in 2010.
Right.
So I'm going to give you guys a little bio on Kenny, and I'm going to have him give you the rest. So Kenny is a graduate from Iowa in 1993.
Yep.
Trained for the Olympics 7 times.
Yep.
Has a wrestling record of 1268 and about what 89 losses, but almost 1,300 wins. BJJ record of 79-4.
I think it's that one's got to get, that was one, but it's like about 100 right now.
100? Because once you got your black belt, you competed more, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then he also is a poet. He wrote a book. You want to tell us what the name of the book is, Kenny?
It's called The Rose and the Silver Bell.
The Rose and the Silver Bell. And you're originally from Wisconsin.
Correct.
Wisconsin. And so, he's got an MMA record of 1-1. Remind us where you fought, which organization?
I fought for Pro Elite. You know, I didn't want to be a fighter,
right?
But I was coaching and I was working at Pro Elite, and you know, there was just an opportunity to fight. And I was like, let me see this fighting business. I had been coaching so much in it, and I wanted to get in there and just kind of feel it. And one was a short notice, and one was extremely short notice.
Yeah.
One was the day of the weigh-ins. I fought the next day.
I saw highlights of that.
I actually, at the time, my daughter's mom, my first daughter's mom, Melanie, was fighting on the card. I was there just coaching her. And so I had none of my stuff. I was keeping a mouthpiece in the car. I actually wore her shorts.
No way.
To fight in.
Shut the front door.
She was the first fight. I was the third.
That's
I walked
crazy.
out with my hands wrapped, and then when she got done with the fight, she took her shorts up and I wore them for the fight.
That is bizarre. And you are currently a local high school coach and also a coach at a couple of the academies in the area.
Mm-hmm.
But you also have cornered a lot of UFC fighters, Lyoto Machida.
I've had 31 UFC champions.
31. Who are some of the ones? BJ Penn is one that I remember, and Noriega's the
Anderson,
other one.
Lyoto,
Anderson,
Nogueira.
Yep.
You know, we have Junior Dos Santos, Fabricio Verdun, Cyborg. You know, Alex Pereira, who's champ now.
So a lot of upper echelon athletes.
It started way back. You know, there was Randy, there was Chuck Liddell.
Absolutely.
So we had the 3 different changes. I mean, I think we're in the 3rd, 4th generation.
And you have some UFC fighters in there right now.
We have Alex Volkov, Pereira,
Yeah.
Toja, that they train and manage out of Black House. So there's some current. We've got some up and coming guys that are in smaller leagues. You know, Albert Morales, Anthony Romero, some kids.
And these are all elite fighters, female and male. I mean, Kenny and I are rough. We're the same height, but if you see the guys that he goes up against, how tall is Volkov? 6'7"?
6'9". He's 6'7", 250, and then Big Ike is 6'9".
Big Ike is just massive and lean as freaking heck. But Kenny goes up against these guys, and I mean, it's just unbelievable. So I want to start at the beginning. You know, you've trained for the Olympics 7 times, right?
This is actually my 40th year of wrestling, my 40th anniversary.
That's a freaking long time.
Some special stuff to occur this year.
4 decades in any craft is just a tremendous accomplishment. I mean,
no days off.
Unbelievable.
From 84, basically October of 84 is when I started.
And you do seminars globally. It's not like you just do them in the U.S. I mean, you go across to Germany.
Most of the stuff I do is overseas.
Overseas.
I think it's definitely probably 70-30, 60-40.
And we'll have you share kind of, for those that are watching across the globe and those that are watching in the U.S., how they can best get in touch with you. So 40 years, what got you started in wrestling? That's your foundation, obviously.
You know, in high school, I played baseball. My uncle played baseball. My grandpa played baseball, so I wanted to be a pro baseball player. I have this kid. His name's Paul Sherritt. I haven't talked to him or seen him since high school.
If you're listening, Paul.
Yeah, if you're listening, Paul, man, it'd be amazing because I always talk about you because he was my friend.
Right.
And he was, I was 98 pounds. He's probably 92 pounds.
Right.
And He was originally, I think he was from Tennessee's southern draw, came into, it wasn't from Mountain Town. And then, you know, like everybody, I'm probably annoying to someone. He was annoying me sometimes, but we were friends.
Right.
I remember one day, you know, we were eating lunch, whatever, like, one of my good friends. And I was like, man, I want to kick his ass. Not in a mean way, just like, man, you know.
You're going to eat this dude up.
Yeah, 2 midgets.
But that's your mentality. You want to go up against anybody.
And so one day he came to me and said, do you want to come off of the wrestling team? All I knew was all-star wrestling. I don't know anything about wrestling. And he's like, you know, the coach will give you a pass. You got a study hall. You can go lift weights. I'm like, I need study hall, man. I got straight A's, so I don't care. He goes, oh, we're the same weight. We probably wrestle each other. I'm like, you know what? I'm in. That was it. I went. And then him and I were the only lightweights.
This is 84.
This is 84. I ended up winning a wrestle-off against him and making varsity. And never looked back. I had my first JV tournament. I had 3 matches, 3 pins.
Wow.
My first varsity match, pin. I'm 4-0, but I'm varsity 1-0. I never lost or won another match again for the whole year. I got my ass handed to me so bad. I had the escape record.
It's humbling
for 30-some years at high school.
Right.
That means I got taken down an awful lot. And nobody was like, yeah, you should be coming back next year. You know, and that was it.
They were saying you shouldn't come back.
There was nobody that was like begging me to come back.
Right.
My coach knew I worked hard. No, he wasn't saying don't come back, but you know, you look at someone that's 1-9, I'm 98 pounds.
Yeah. They underestimated what you were going to become.
Something happened where wrestling just took hold of, and I never stopped.
It enveloped you. I mean, so you trained under Dan Gable, the famous Dan Gable. For those of you that don't know, tell us a little bit about Dan Gable in Iowa.
You know, I was fortunate. My high school coaches were the most amazing coaches you could ever have in life. And my college coaches were amazing. And obviously, you know, I had Dave Schultz was a coach of mine. Dan Gable he's obviously the greatest ever. And, you know, having a coach like that, I always say it's chasing the ghost.
Right.
You can never catch and do what he did. People have won more medals. They've won different things. They never did what he did.
Right.
They're not him. It doesn't matter who you are. Dan Gable is the top of Mount Everest.
Cream of the crop.
And to be under him every day, and see every day, it definitely shaped. I had a great work ethic. I had great family support.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got there, I thought I knew how to work. And there's a whole different level to the game. And
right.
because of that, it kept me the way I am now, you know, for better and for worse.
Well, look, I mean, you mentioned a couple of key things, which is a family that supported your endeavor, right? And you talked about a great mentor in Dan Gable.
Yeah.
So those that are listening, whether we're live streaming or later on through YouTube or the other, Podbean, iHeart, Apple, Spotify, and Amazon, why is it important for today's kids to get started in any sport, specifically wrestling? Because it's become really important. I see a lot of new kids getting into the sport, getting into the art. So why do you think it's important for those that are watching, have children? Like, what do I need to get them into? Wrestling as a foundation.
You know, I've done so many sports growing up. Before, like I said, I didn't start wrestling until 9th grade, so I did basketball, baseball, gymnastics, swimming, you know, football. I mean, I did everything, you know, because that's what you do grow up. Go outside and play in neighborhood sports.
We grew up in a different area. We played on the street, right?
You have to worry about pedophiles coming and swooping you up back in the day. You could just go wherever and do whatever. I mean, that's just the real deal. I got 2 daughters, and I'm not letting them walk down the street to the park ever without me until they get a certain age. And then even then, when we were old, man, the parents like, get out, don't come back. I used to leave. My dad used to like make breakfast for me, like, get out of the house, you come back at lunch.
It's different today, man.
And after you eat lunch, you get out of the house, you come back when the street lights are on. That's it.
Yeah, that's the
same. I think that getting involved in sports, in any sports, is going to teach kids discipline, accountability, working as a team. Even if you're an individual sport, like wrestling is highly individual, but you have to train as a team. You're accountable, and you know there's work ethic, there's discipline, there's a truth that comes from finding out the work you put in is what you're going to get back. Absolutely. You can't blame anybody. Team sports, you can catch all your passes as a receiver, and you could be player of the game, but your team can lose.
Yeah.
Well, in wrestling, man, you're the quarterback, you're the center, you're the receiver, you're the special teams, you're the kicker, you're everything. And there's nowhere to hide. You walk on the mat, there's you, you're the other person, the referee. And there's nowhere to hide. I love all sports. I love what all sports do for you. I lived at the Olympic Training Center. I was able to train, not train like for the Olympic, but train with these different Olympic teams, from the badminton team to swimming to gymnastics. I was able to go in there because we have friends. So I'm like, man, let me come in and try it and see, and you understand that every sport. When you're at that elite level, you can't do anything. Right. It doesn't matter who you are. And like that's like, take the most elite gymnast and have them come to wrestle. Never gonna happen. Why don't you go try to do an iron cross? Never gonna happen. So every sport teaches you a lot of things. And I think that you can take a lot from it. And wrestling is just, man, it's a different type of toughness than I experienced in other sports. Like I said, every sport's technically hard. Everything has their nuances, and every sport's hard in their own right. But when other sports tell you that wrestlers are crazy, that's all it is. But wrestling is just something like you go out there, it's just one-on-one. Right. It's like a combat sport. You know, there's the taekwondo, there's karate, there's boxing, where you woman on woman, man on man, and no one else to blame. You don't win, that's on you.
It's on. Well, there's pure accountability too.
It's everything's accountability. Everything's about the training. Everything's about, there is a truth that comes when another man, if you're a man or another woman, snatches you up and beats you down. Because as a man, let's say as a man,
right?
Men are might makes right, king of the jungle, lions, everything. Well,
the machismo.
And when someone kicks the shit out of you, that can have a very, it can have one or two effects. Well, there's three. I always say three.
Yeah.
One, you don't care. It's whatever. Whatever. You're just destined to just be a fucking bobber around someone else's ocean. The other thing that happens is, you know, you care, but you don't care enough. You'll put your time in, and you'll get upset about it. You'll take success with your wins. You'll lose. You'll stay here. But the others, they can't have it. Right. And sometimes then the losing sometimes stings you so bad you want to win. But then the winning isn't good enough. Like for me, the winning was never good enough because the winning wasn't satisfying. Right. It became about the journey. The training is the drug. So I always tell my kids that winning and losing is for sports. A failure to prepare is not. Yeah. And if you're preparing the best you can, you're going to win or you're going to lose. And you can't take winning and be like, yes, and then we're losing and be so down. Right. You have to then, that's just one match. You have to go do it again. And you know what, those are just matches. Yeah. You're trying to prepare and practice. You're trying to prepare and that prepares you for life too, because life isn't always going to keep you up. Life is going to knock you the F down a lot. And I don't realize how bad I might have been without supportive family, supportive friends, and a sport that taught me, in sports plural, but wrestling since mostly for me, taught me, you know, even in the worst of times, I'm kind of okay. Yeah. I don't mind, like I said,
you're not as bad as you think you are.
The deeper the hole I can dig for myself on my own, it became more about how deep you're not going to put me in a hole as deep as I'm going to put myself. Right. And so I try to keep myself in the dirtiest, darkest place and get out. I don't want to stay down there, but I can live down there, I'm all right. But if someone put me somewhere that I wasn't used to being, maybe I won't be comfortable. But if you drag me down to 10 feet, but I'm used to being at 25, I don't care. Right. And so then you get used to this, and that's a certain discipline, a certain work ethic, a certain comfortability of finding the comfort level. And they always say, be comfortable being uncomfortable. How about just fucking don't be uncomfortable? You just keep digging.
That's an alternative.
You keep digging your own hole, and then you can climb out of it when you want. And then when someone tries to bring you down, okay, you want to bring me down 10 feet? We're going down further, baby. Yeah. You know, and
I think you mentioned a number of things that are pertinent. One, we talked about it earlier, peer accountability, the structure that you get, the self-confidence. The self-criticism is worse than someone else criticizing you.
Has to be.
And you can't be shackled by the losses or the inability to win every tournament. It's not about, it's about creating permanence. Because you have to, especially at the upper echelon, make the necessary adjustments to be great at what you do.
Right.
I mean, you're going to face adversity in life. You're going to face adversity
Right.
in sport. So therefore, how do you overcome those challenges and adversity that helps you push forward versus being shackled and consumed by, I had a loss, so what do I do?
Well, man, I think I've been more hard on myself in some of my victories, because just because you win doesn't mean you performed properly.
Right.
You might have done something wrong, but you got lucky. And a lot of people, they win and they don't assess the fact that that guy slipped on sweat. Well, I was out of position, I got lucky. And then you start assessing, and you have to look at yourself through the same lens, whether you win or lose. Because there isn't a winning lens and a losing lens. A lot of people, they win and it's just woo, and then when they lose, they're like, we'll come back stronger. You shouldn't have to reinvent yourself after some loss. Fighting, you might fight a very active fighter, let's say about 3 times a year.
Right.
Some could be more, some could be less. But when you take a fight and then you have 3 months off until your next fight, you can maybe recalibrate some things a little differently. But in wrestling, you wrestle at 9 a.m. and you wrestle again at noon. You wrestle again at 3. You're wrestling again at 5. You might have 4. You can have 5 or 6 matches in high school in one day. So you might win all of them. You might win a couple. You might lose off the bat, and you got to pull out because you got an hour and you got to go.
Oh yeah.
So you're making these moves on the fly. You don't have time to reinvent yourself after a loss. You better know who you are. You're not going to reinvent yourself anyways. When I see people take 6 months and come back and say, I'm the new, whatever their name is, I'm the new Kenny Johnson. No, you're not. No, you're not. Oh, you got a new camp, you got new coaches, you got a new car, you got maybe some new moves you might try, but when the shit comes down, you're going to do the same old thing because that's how you train. And what wrestling taught me, to look at myself through that same lens, the lens of truth.
Right.
What did you do right? What did you do wrong? What did you do good? What did you do bad? Whatever the words you're going to use, continue to hone yourself. When it's good, continue to do good.
Right.
When something went wrong, assess it, make the adjustments, repeat it, go to the next one.
Don't dwell on it.
So the longest I take it,
You guys listening to this, by the way?
the longest I would take any type of feeling of positivity from a win would be however long the ref holds my hand up, and when it's down,
That's it.
That's it. That's it. I have two things in my 40 years that made 3. When I got my black belt from Cobrini, I felt
And
like
BJJ, by the way.
in jiu-jitsu, that was something that was important. My first Olympic trials I qualified for, when I actually qualified for that, man, that felt so good. I just felt like, man, like I had been working so hard. It wasn't the pinnacle.
It's a lifetime of training to get to a certain point.
And that point was not even winning. That was just making it to another tournament.
Yeah.
That's not even making it. And then when I took second at the Olympic Festival, when they used to have these things called Olympic Festival,
Right.
those 3 things to me were so important. Not even when I became an All-American in college, I wouldn't even rank that in the top 3. But the success, to me, not because I've won everything, because I never made an Olympic team. I didn't make a world team, but I've been very successful. And when I won, which I won a lot more than I lost, mostly it was, I'm supposed to win. Not because I'm me, not because of my ego, because I train hard.
Right.
Train harder than anybody. I don't see, when I lose, I'm like, okay, what happened? Okay, go. When I win, I'm like, oh my God, I won. No, that's why it's like, what's next? Because there's always something next.
Right.
Maybe the wrestling career, I'm not wrestling anymore, but you know what's next? My high school kids, my pro fighters, my daughter's soccer. There's someone else's success as a coach. Now, instead of me wrestling one match, I can win once. I go to a tournament, I got 14 kids, I can win 60 times in one day.
Yeah.
I can also lose 60 times in one day.
You could.
So as a coach, however the emotions that you get drawn up, like emotionally draining to train, to be an athlete, or to work and be whatever.
Right.
As a coach, you really emotionally invested, and so you can win
It's
a bunch.
amplified for you because you got various.
My finger's on their pulse, and I'm
wrestlers.
not just like point and shoot, I'm there. So you learn that from the sports too. You learn adversity, just like in jobs and families and life. Life's gonna kick your teeth out, man, pretty good.
Yeah.
And
We talk about that, you and I, quite a bit
Yeah.
about the challenges we face in life.
gonna
How
challenge
sports can
you.
translate you to help you overcome that.
And so hopefully you've challenged yourself so much that when something does come down hard on you, you don't cave in, that you can actually keep going. And if you're single or you don't have kids or you don't have someone relying on you, you can afford to crumble. You can afford to, I guess, be an alcoholic or do some bullshit.
It's tough.
It's tough. But man, why don't you have? I have 2 little girls. You got 4 kids.
I have 4 kids. Yeah.
How are you gonna look at me
Yeah.
like, yeah, I'm not gonna be good for you for the next 3 or 4 months because I lost this match. So just fend for yourself. Like when things go wrong, I've had close people to me die. I had stuff to take my daughter to school. I still have to go and put food on the table. So you have to learn to shift these gears differently. And when you're young, I don't think you can learn that. When you're younger, and you can start learning things in sports, in life, if you have good mentors, good friends, good family. So I think it all comes into play.
Right.
My family didn't wrestle, so they knew nothing about wrestling to help me, but they knew about work.
Right.
They knew about training. They knew
about the work ethic.
other things. They knew how to go to work. They knew how to they knew, and they supported me. They didn't tell me what I needed to do. They didn't tell me what class I needed to take. Is what I showed interest in. All they asked of me is give it 100%.
Absolutely.
That's it.
And I think, kids add a different dynamic to life.
Right.
And not having kids is also, if you don't, it's a great way to build camaraderie. I think what I found in starting to train in 2010, and I was in the military, so there was a certain landscape there, a ton of camaraderie, and I missed that to a certain extent. And then I find it in BJJ, and so getting into wrestling, you're there for 4 decades. When did you start training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu?
2006, when I was 35.
So for those of you listening, 35 is when he started, so it's never too late. And I started at the age of 40.
35, and I
4
just
years
remember, I moved in not far from where we are right now in Redondo Beach, and I moved in. I bought a house. I was moving in. This Mexican guy comes over, teardrops, dubbed out, and
I remember this story.
And he came in and he walked up to me and was like, "Hey Holmes, this is my neighborhood." I was like, "Hey, I just bought this house, so it's like our neighborhood." He's like, "My family's been here for 70 years. He showed me his mom's house down there, his house, his sister's house. I was like, "Hey, okay, good. If anything happens, I'll come grab you."
Around this neighborhood.
And I say, "Well, it's our neighborhood. Get going." And he goes, "Do you fight?" And I'm like, "No." I train fighting. I've already, but I just didn't feel like having this.
Fighters don't say they fight. They're
I was like, I coach, whatever. I'm still training. I hadn't trained jiu-jitsu yet because here's the start of that. And then he's like, well, I have a friend of mine's trained for a fight. If you train, you come train for us. I was like, you know what, man, do you train? He's like, yeah. I'm like, all right. I said, we're going to train right now. So I went in the house and I told my wife at the time, I said, I gotta go train this guy across the street. She goes, the movers are here, what are you doing? I was like, I just told her, I said, I gotta go show him whose fucking neighborhood this is, actually. I went down the street, and then we went to the gym, and then I beat him up, and I beat his friend up who was training for the fight. And then the coach was the guy named Higa Machado, and he put his arm around me, asked me if I wanted to be his wrestling coach. And that's how I started, and I didn't know who Higan was. I had no idea.
And Higan's trained people like Keanu Reeves.
I mean, Higan's one of the greatest jiu-jitsu guys
celebrities.
ever. So I went home and I looked him up and I realized that Higan's kind of like the Dan Gable of jiu-jitsu. So I went and bought a gi the next day, started 35 years old, white belt, boom. And then that was 2006, 2017, I got my black belt. It was a pretty big accomplishment, and I just remember, I just approached jiu-jitsu just like wrestling, training every single day, going after it. So it like I said, camaraderie, opened up a different thing. Wrestling all of a sudden became super relevant because MMA got bigger, and I had already been wrestling for 15, 20 years before before MMA really took its wheels and started going, and then learning jiu-jitsu. And so it was able to afford me the luxury to wrestle my whole life, which everyone said you can't wrestle your whole life. You can't wrestle your whole life. Well,
That's what everybody
40
says.
years.
Everyone says at a certain age in life you gotta temper it a little bit. Do you temper your training at all? Do you scale it back? Because I've seen who you wrestle with.
The training is the drug for me, so scaling it back would be scaling back my life, which I'm not going to do.
Yeah,
I have scaled this one piece back. I don't need to spar that hard. I have no need to get shin kicked in my face and not know what day it is.
Yeah. So
Don't need that.
once,
So when I
once
spar,
we get to 50, we don't
when I
need to knock out
spar,
anymore.
all my fighters know, I always tell them, hit me as hard as I hit you.
Yeah.
I keep it real nice.
Well, the reality is,
keep it playful.
yes, because students will ask you, how hard are you going to go? Like when you're sparring. Like the students have asked me,
Well,
how hard are
sparring
you
as far as punching, wrestling and jiu-jitsu,
there's no limit.
1000%
So I grappled
don't care.
with this guy. I'm always reminded of this one time we grappled. You were a brown belt at the time. I think I was maybe a purple or a brown. And I do this weird move where it's kind of a reverse rear naked, and I put a lot of grind on the back of the neck. And Kenny had me mounted because wrestling with Kenny is like or training with Kenny is a whole different level when it's on the ground, even when it's wrestling. You remember when you put your hand in my, he apologized before doing this. He goes, Jamal, I apologize for doing this. And he starts putting it in my face. He smashed my nose so that he could get out of the move. I'm like, what do you apologize for it, dude? That was hilarious. I thought that was funny.
So I was wasn't get out, and it's already tight. So I was like,
is I'm sorry, Jamal, I'm gonna do this. It's gonna happen. We did it. But I love what you bring to the academy too, because you do it, like I said, you do a ton of seminars locally, globally, but the students appreciate your enthusiasm, your energy, and your discipline. I mean, you're very disciplined, dude. Talk about that. Why is that important as a coach? I mean, you talked about the importance of discipline as a wrestler, but as a coach, why is that important?
I don't think you can be a coach. I don't think you can be a teacher. I don't think you should lead anybody or anything if you have no discipline. Because when you're the person that they're looking at towards the top, you have to, you might not be the greatest, because every teacher and every coach wasn't the greatest ever lived, but they know how to teach, they know how to lead, well, hopefully. And the people that you're trying to guide in whatever you're doing, sports, work, religion, whatever it is, you want to give them the best you can.
Right.
And my job is to, whatever day I have, it doesn't matter. I have to come in, I'm 100%. Whether someone's paying to be there in my class, whether I'm paying to be in someone else's class, I can't come in and be like, you spend your whole day at work, you're coming to get a good workout in, and I can't come in and be like, bad day today.
Yeah, you got to put that outside.
And now I got to put it on you. Of course, you're like, oh man, what happened? Sorry. No, it's like no matter what happens. So my horse died today. Don't matter. Now it doesn't matter to you.
He does have a horse, by the way.
And it did die one day, and I couldn't miss practice. And so my mom, and so people, they go, and it's like you have to put those things aside, because there's a lot of people that rely on you and count on you, and the discipline doesn't start on that day.
Right.
The discipline is implemented on that day. The discipline starts when you're little, like the parents say, you clean the room, and when you got to do the dishes, when you don't sweep the dust under the carpet. It's like
children listening to this, if your kids are watching, what your parents tell you must be done.
It takes decades to develop discipline. I'm not saying you can't have it sooner, but to have ultimate discipline to where if you want to lead people or coach people or guide people or mentor people, you should have unwavering discipline, because a lot of times, sometimes your words aren't going to resonate with people,
right,
but what you do. And that's why I train with all my fighters. I'm not the guy that says go out there and run 100 sprints, because I could just tell you go 100 sprints. It's easy for me to say do 100.
Yeah.
And then when they're dying, I'm like, come on, and you see a lot of people yelling. If you're out there running, you realize, ooh, you ain't even gonna make it to 100. If I can't make it to 100, then I messed up, because I have to be in better shape than the people I go against. That or I coach, not because I'm challenging them. That's my challenge.
Right.
Now my finger's on the pulse. If I told you to do 100 sprints, I'm doing them, and at about 60, I'm 100% dead. Then I spoke up too much. I'm like, guys,
You set the standard too high.
But if I'm sitting on the sidelines, I have no idea what it's doing to you. Or somebody comes to say, Coach, I'm dead. I'm like, you can't be. You can't be dead. Tomorrow I'm sore. You can't be.
Right.
If I'm doing it, you can do it. And so I like to lead from the front, and I like to have the discipline's important, because sometimes when I was faltering and I'm looking over at my upperclassmen, when I was an athlete, upperclassmen, higher level guys, coaches, when I wanted to quit and they're going, I'm like, okay, I can't, they're going, so I can go.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking, and so I think that even you can look to your side, there might be some of your own level and they're going. but there's something about watching your coach or a mentor or a higher level belt or a higher placed person on the team, upperclassman, that you can draw the energy from, that they're not, a lot of people don't even know how to teach.
They're setting the example.
They set the example. Sometimes, it's not don't do as I say, do as I do. And if I'm doing it, and I can say the same thing, but if you're not doing it, I'm not listening to people that tell me what to do, but don't set an example.
Yeah.
I don't really respect that too much.
No,
Now, as someone gets older and they tell me what to do, I've known what they've done, I can match that. But someone that is in around me or my age
have no frame of reference.
No frame of reference, tell me to do all this crazy stuff, I don't respect you.
Right.
You're out there doing it with me, I don't care if I can beat you, you're doing it, now I'm pulling you with where you're pulling me.
Right.
And I think the discipline is the cornerstone of everything, because most people want motivation to do things. Like you get an allowance, you get a paycheck, that's a motivation. Why you go to work? To get paid. Most people don't go to work because they love their work. They love what that work gets them. That's that money, to have a house, to take vacation, wherever it is. You can actually love your job too. But I can put this out to you. Go and spend all your time doing something you love that does not pay you and cannot pay you. That would be being a high school wrestling coach. You're gonna spend more time being a coach than you could ever possibly get paid for. And you have to love it like you're getting paid $1 million, because if you falter, you know what you're doing? I got 48 kids on my team last year. If I falter for 1 second, that's 1 second that one of those kids might falter and might not make it. Like I said earlier, I had the best coaches you could ever have in life. I never saw them falter. I don't know what was going on in their personal life. I'm thinking back to this day, I never heard my coaches say nothing was going on in their life. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what happened in their life before me. And I'll tell you what, they gave everything to me, because of that, I'm better for it. So that's the kind of the same thing as my parents, same thing as everyone else. So my thing is, like, the discipline has to be there when motivation's not. If there's not money, if someone says, hey, if you do this, we're gonna take a trip. Hey, if you do this, I'm gonna get ice cream. Hey, if you do this, well, none of that shit's there.
Right. If there's no intrinsic motivation, internal motivation,
You need discipline.
You need discipline.
You need discipline.
No matter
You were
how
in the
much.
military. How much motivation is go up, and maybe you're gonna get shot and killed today.
I
No
mean,
motivation because your paycheck isn't enough.
right. The money doesn't contribute to the overall success of
So
your.
the discipline, sometimes accomplishing tasks, and just the journey has to become beautiful. Like I said, the training is the drug for me.
Yeah.
And without that, and then watching the success of other people, like I said, I can go to a tournament, I can have 14 kids, 60 different successes and failures. Whereas if I go to a tournament, I can maybe have 4 or 5 matches. And so the discipline's important, because every day I wake up, my alarm goes off. I don't really sit there and go, yes, this is the most amazing. I can't wait to go work out so hard that I might have to go to the hospital and have surgery.
And that's what happens in our sport.
Or go and work all day and don't get paid, but still have to pay the rent. So I got to figure out another way to get paid. All of it comes down to discipline. You get up and you have 100 reasons that you can think of why you don't want to go do what you're going to do. You just need one. Just get out of bed.
That's it.
And then when you're in the middle of doing it, you most likely find this is good.
I like what you talked about, because you started off in terms of discipline talking about you leave all your issues at the door. And not only is that applicable in our art, but it's also applicable at the workplace as a leader, right? If you're responsible for a lot of people, ultimately you have to put your whatever issues you have that don't involve work at the door. And if they do involve work, then you leverage the different resources to address them. And your students don't want to see a Debbie Downer. They want to see someone inspiring, someone who takes action, and someone who is not focused just on them, they're focused on the students and their success. Because I always say the coach's measurement of success is their students. It isn't our success, because the harder you work, the harder you prepare your wrestlers, the better they are, right? And you have some great wrestlers that even teach your classes when you're traveling, which I find stems from the fact that you've trained them, you've disciplined them enough to buy into the next thing we're going to talk about, which is Bolt Wrestling. So founder of Bolt Wrestling, and you have a methodology behind it, and there's promotions throughout. So talk about the origination of Bolt Wrestling and the methodology.
One thing I'll say before we get that, the success of
As you do that, I'm going to charge the other phone. Keep going.
The success of my wrestlers and anyone I teach isn't the medals they win or the place they take or the victories they have. It's about the growth that they have from where they started to where they're moving towards. Because I always explain it this way, I could have a wrestler that he's a C. That's his top. He's a C.
Mm-hmm.
I have other wrestlers that maybe they're an A or a B. That wrestler that's an A, they come out and they give me a B. It's still better than the C. But that's an underachiever and I can't be associated with that. Even though the B is great. The C guy comes out and gives me full 100% C. That means he's giving me everything he's got. I'll take that person over the A any day that doesn't work. Now you give me a C that gives you a C plus or a B minus, he just exceeded life. And the A plus guy gives you an A minus, and he looks at you and goes, why are you so happy about this B minus guy? Look at me, I'm an A. I'm like, yeah, but you are capable of more and you cheated yourself. You think winning is what matters. It's about growth. So like wrestling to me is a vehicle. And most of the kids are not going to train for 40 years. They're not going to do it. They're not going to train. They're not going to train past high school if they even make it 4 years. In any sport, the sport, which would be wrestling for me, is a vehicle. You get in the car with me in 9th grade or whatever grade, and then you get out of the car, whatever you get. When you get out of the car, you're going to get in a new car, whether that's to medical school, lawyer, whatever you're going to go. I hope that when you got in the car, you're here, and when you get out of the car, you're here. Does that mean you had a winning record, losing record, but you could develop work ethic, accountability, seeing truth through different lenses, and you need to be a better human being, man or woman, than when you got in my car, and that's what wrestling is, and that's how I measure success. You know, like I said, sports, winning and losing is part of it.
Right.
I got one kid on the team, he didn't win one match until his sophomore year. I created an award for him. It's called the Savage Award. The guy never missed a practice, never not a smile face, and got his ass that ever loved shit. And you know what the thing is? Everyone, Joe, you didn't win one match. I remember when I was a freshman, I won one. So that dude was just one match different than me. No different than me. So I had one match I won, he won none. And you know, I kept coming back and kept coming back, you know. So you stand back up. It's all these memes and cliches like you get knocked down 7 times, get up 8, that's all that matters. The winner is the loser.
It's that one opportunity that can change the landscape for you.
And so for me, the success of the people I coach, you're obviously looking at a performance, like did you win these medals so that you can adjust your performance.
Right.
But outside of all that, just did you become a better human being? Did you add all these principles that sports, specifically wrestling, can give to you? And that's how I judge a success. And I don't think you can go through a full wrestling season and not grow. It's impossible, it's too hard.
Right.
And so, yeah, then moving into Bolt, you know, I created the Bolt wrestling system. You know, my high school coach was amazing. I had 3 amazing coaches, Andy Furnace and Steve Case, Lyle Schubert. And I remember one time we wanted to wrestle a high school, and we were training all week because this one high school, all of them do the same move. Our coach, we didn't have a move that we did. We had a bunch of moves, right? So I asked my coach, so how come they all do the same move?
Yeah.
He said, well, sometimes that's all their coach knows.
Right.
And it made sense to me. But then I thought, well, what if my coach didn't show me a certain move that I actually gravitated towards? What if he would just show his moves?
Right.
He showed us a whole bunch of moves, and then everyone on our team had different moves.
Yeah.
We go to watch some teams, and their team do the same stuff. We know what they're going to do, we beat them.
Yeah.
So this concept of you have to learn, have as much foundation as you can. That was in '84.
A variation of moves, not just
Do you know, like,
focused on one.
what if I showed you only no guillotines?
Yeah.
Because he has the Jamal team.
Okay.
So what if we were to
They don't know
show
about that.
guillotines? Then you would never have that move, and maybe you aren't as successful.
Right.
Then maybe you quit because maybe getting just beat up all the time isn't good. Maybe something was very comfortable for you to do, but I stopped you from doing it because that's not what I do. So now you can't develop your own style. So the idea was to have a foundation, like everything. If you took a history of the United States and I ripped out just one chapter, World War II, and you came over here, you never knew history of war, so you started learning. You knew the whole book, you're a college scholar, and at some point someone mentions to you, hey, well, what do you think on World War II? You're like, I never even heard of World War II. but everyone else has. But you just read the book that didn't have the chapter in it. Just kind of like now where they
remove certain
remove certain things from all over the place.
Yeah.
Right?
There's
Agendas, but none of that. If I tore out World War
Different
II
talk
and
show.
gave you the book and you read it, you know everything, you wouldn't know World War II. So how can you have a foundation of U.S. history without World War II or world history?
Right.
So I always thought like you should learn as much as you can,
Yeah.
and then each person will this person will gravitate. They'll create their own style. Then one day I was at a wedding in D.C. and it was a Methodist church.
Mhm.
I'm not very religious.
We don't hold it against you.
I mean, my
appreciate
thing is just don't be an asshole.
Yeah.
That's if you just can stay there.
And he's a nice guy until he doesn't have to be.
And sometimes I'm an asshole, so I try not to be because that's what my main thing is. Don't be an asshole, right? So I remember walking into the church and I was like saw some numbers and they're like, oh yeah, that's the sermon. And it was formed like each weekend. It was this. And they said, hey, every weekend, the sermon's on this topic at all Methodist
So
church.
you had divine intervention.
Kind of, but each pastor or person would you talk on the same topic, but it'd be their own. So I thought, man, so if you're traveling and you want to still be on your path of your religious path and you had to leave for a couple weeks, you go to a church and you're kind of going to be on the same path, you're going to teach the same stuff,
Right.
but different messages because different someone's saying that. I was like, that's cool. I said, oh, that'd be kind of like if no matter where in the world you are, if you learn wrestling and everyone learned it the same and taught it the same. So that was 95. So I started working on this system. I was like, there should be a foundation that everyone should know. Wrestling is a non-revenue sport. You're lucky to even have a coach most of the time. But other sports like football, baseball, basketball, hockey, you can watch these on, you can watch all the pro, you can watch Jordan, you can mimic his styles, but until YouTube, you couldn't see anything.
Right.
So you're at the mercy of your coach. I had great coaches. A lot of people are unfortunate like that. So then you only know what they know. And a lot of them aren't doing PhD, master's levels in wrestling, going to seminars, learning. So you're at the mercy of their knowledge. And usually your high school coach knows what their high school coach knew. And then it perpetuates. And they're go to college, they're a school teacher, they come back, they used to wrestle, now they're the coach, and whether they're good or bad doesn't matter. So my thing was like, what if everyone had a standardized teaching and learning system? So I started creating this system. And I didn't have a name for it, but I started teaching it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was teaching a guy, his name's Danny Inosanto.
Yep.
Danny Inosanto is a teacher coach. He was Bruce Lee's student and coach. And he was a school teacher up in PV, met Bruce Lee in the 60s. And Bruce Lee had his whole system in his head, and Danny Inosanto got it down on paper. I have a guy named Marco Carr, same thing. I had a whole system in my mind. I met a student of mine, and he ended up getting my whole system on paper. I had it in my head, and I would teach it. And then I didn't have a name for it, and I was teaching Danny. Fun fact that he did this for Bruce and Mark did this for me, but I was one day after teaching Danny for a couple years, I came in and he said, Kenny, I want you to start over at 0 from lesson 1 and teach me how to teach.
Mm.
And so now Danny's the greatest living martial artist on the planet.
Mm.
I looked at him, I said, Danny, I'm not going to start at 0. I said, because the way I taught you, how you learn is how you in turn teach.
Right.
I don't have a way I teach you a move and then come back to it and then teach you how to teach it. I teach you the move in its entirety from all the nuances. How you learn it, you'll then teach it.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of felt like after I was driving home from Marina Del Rey, I was on the 90, I was getting on the 90, it goes to the 405. And so, also I'm a huge Elvis fan, so this makes a big difference too. So I was driving and I thought, I just told Danny Inosanto no to a question. He wanted me to start him over at 0, and I kept thinking, man, did I do the right thing? Because I kind of felt there was a pause. So I was
You
driving,
should look up who Danny Inosanto is if you don't know.
and so I said, okay, I was running through the conversation. I said, so, okay, I said, I teach you the basics, the foundation, how you learn the basics, how you learn them, you'll then teach them. Basics of learning and teaching.
Right.
Bolt.
Fun.
And that, so I was like, no.
So you all got that, right? Basics of learning and teaching with
Acronym.
Bolt Wrestling, right?
So Bolt Wrestling. And then I love Elvis, and so the lightning bolt is part of Elvis. So then when I said basics of learning and teaching, I was like, Bolt. Then I remember I could change the L out and put a lightning bolt so the bolt would read bolt while you're reading bolt. This all happened in 10 seconds, and by the time I was driving in the parking lane, about to run into the median, into the guardrail on the 90. I've spaced out for I don't know how long. And I swerved my car over.
And then,
Bolt wrestling, baby.
Bolt wrestling was
Bolt
born.
wrestling was born. And then I started organizing to a system, and I had started jujitsu, so I was familiar with the idea. So I kicked off in 07. I started jujitsu in 06. Everybody would always ask me, what belt are you in wrestling? And wrestlers, belt, whatever.
Two things best wrestlers don't have is a belt, and they hate to be on their backs. Go ahead.
And no common sense apparently to be a wrestler. So we got 3 things going against us. So, the wrestling, the only way you can tell someone how good of a wrestler you were is if by accolades. In jiu-jitsu, in karate, everything else, you have a belt. So if you walk into an academy and you see a purple belt, you know. If you see a black belt, you know. If you see a white belt, you know. If you see a wrestler walking through, you don't know anything. And then you have to compare. Like if I meet a wrestler, like, oh, Jamal, I wrestled in high school. Well, I'm like, oh, how old are you? 52. Okay, so high school is 40 years ago. So now we got to go back to 40, figure out where we are. Yeah, I wrestled for 3 years in high school. Yeah, I took 4th in my city championships. I'm like, 4th in this city. 40 years ago. I mean, once you wrestle, you already know it's tough, but
Right.
How you gauge
What 4th is?
in Sawtell, Iowa, like Marion, Iowa, are pretty good for that. But some small town, you took 4th in the city championships in '84.
And it could have been only 10 people.
Could have been 3.
Yeah.
And you took 4th, so there you are. I don't know how to do it. And if you took 4th in this city in Iowa versus this city in Vermont, you'd probably have a better wrestler potentially. So I was like, well, now we have a standardized learning and teaching system and a grading system. Just now, if you're a white or a blue or a purple, I follow the same colors as jiu-jitsu. I was like, if you walk in, you're a blue belt in wrestling or a blue bolt, I was a 4th degree black belt in wrestling, and I was a white belt in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
And when I came into jiu-jitsu class, I wore a white belt. And then when we'd go live, I would tear people completely back on the feet. Doesn't matter what belt. Then you hit the ground, then the higher the belt, over.
Yeah.
Choke, armbar, I don't know what that is. But on the feet, they'd be like, oh, and because there's takedowns in jiu-jitsu, they were like, oh, you're not really a white belt, you're a higher belt. I'm like, no, my takedowns are on a stratosphere up here. My jiu-jitsu, I didn't even know what an armbar was or a shrimp, nothing. When they caught up to each other, it helped. But the idea of having a
They complement each other
standardized,
really well now that you're a black belt, obviously.
a standardized learning and teaching system.
Mhm.
Basics of learning and teaching. So that's why I told Dan, I said, the basics of how I teach you, you'll in turn, how you learn, you'll in turn teach. And that's how bolt wrestling started. And when I started this belt system, I called Gable, talked to him about it, kind of gave me a stamp of approval, like that's good, anything to grow wrestling. I talked to a lot of my friends, they understood it, but a lot of people were like, belts for wrestling, that's stupid. So I got a lot.
Stupid because they didn't come up with it, by the way.
Could be, because
Yeah.
I'm the only one is trademarked, so if you come out with it, I'm gonna have to sue you. No, I wouldn't do that. Anyone that's trying to grow wrestling, I'm gonna help you. I will help you put together your own
And he
system.
does. I go to class an hour before we start teaching to hit the bags. I actually learned by watching. So even though I'm hitting the bags, I'm also listening to him. He doesn't know it, but I'm listening and watching the moves that he does with the students.
It's like,
And I use them when we're standing up in jiu-jitsu, by the way.
it's for me, I want to grow wrestling. I love
It's your
wrestling.
passion, man. 40 years.
I love wrestling, and I didn't know how much I loved it. I just kept doing it. And there's this philosopher, Alan Watts, that says, find something that you love, become an expert in it, and then you'll never, people will seek you out.
Yep,
If
exactly.
you go chase money, you'll miss money. But if you're an expert, people will find you.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like, I didn't understand the concept. I kind of understood the concept. But then I was going through a pretty tough time, and Jamal, this is one of the things that changed why I'm not in banking.
Yeah, so he
It's
tells
Jamal.
me this conversation, and I don't remember it, and so I'm going to share the story. Would you mind if I share?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, how long ago was it?
I'll tell you exactly when. It's probably about, give or take, 14 years, 13,
Has it been
12 years, 12.
So, and I apologize profusely on this because I would never At least I didn't think I did. So he asked me, he says 12 years ago, he asked me my thoughts on getting into banking as a licensed banker.
But let me give you a background. I used to be a stockbroker.
Yes.
And I was going through our time. Got divorced, had to sell my house.
Yeah.
My dog died. I had a daughter with someone I wasn't with. I was experiencing, I had some other deaths in my personal life. There was just a lot came down at one time. The company I was working for folded, so I had no job, no dog, a kid, no girlfriend, wife, no house.
I feel bad.
No, it was
As
so
a Sarah
much,
story again.
and I was like, I was trying to figure out how to stay afloat, and
You finish.
yeah, and I just remember, Jamal's in banking, was in banking, and I just said to him one day, I was like, hey man, what do you think about getting back into banking? He didn't know my full background, but I used to be a stockbroker. I used to work for T. Rowe Price in a financial investment firm, and I just felt like I might need to just give this wrestling bullshit up because, so many things that there's not a lot of ways to make money, and this was, kind of when UFC started taking off, but I had a kid, and I
2012.
all these things, and so he had said, man, I own the academy. One of the owners, I have my partners, husband, wife, Ricardo and Gisele, so we're in the academy, and he said, why would you want to go into banking, man? You've been wrestling, you're so good at wrestling, just keep wrestling. And I didn't want to look at him like, bro, because I'm broke.
I did not.
Everything around me died, my house went away, my job went away, and I'm like, I'm trying to figure out, like, how can I fast track, and I need to make some damn money so I pay my bills. I'm thinking, like, what can I do? I'm on death row from where I am. He's like, no. He goes, you're an expert. Just keep doing what you're doing. He goes, you've been wrestling this long. Just do it. And I was like, man, and it's like, I was like, okay, well.
In the moment, were you pissed?
No, it wasn't bad. I took what he said and I understood what he said. He didn't know all the other things, that were going on. And I just thought, you know what, man, I was like, all right. So I was thinking, man, okay, Jamal's kind of up in here. I can maybe get a fast track into a good job.
And I would have, dude, by.
And then I didn't push it though, because I just thought,
you know
what?
But hey, hindsight, right?
But I was thinking, wasn't my first choice. I let myself, not let myself, but all these things were happening, and I just went to it when all the horses were down here dead. But then he said to me, I was like, you know what? All right. I just kind of left that alone, and I just kept plowing. But this was just a few years after I kind of started implementing the Bolt system. It was just a few years that all of a sudden I got more fighters. I became partners in the gym. We had my fighters started taking off. My Bolt wrestling system took off, and now here we are.
Yeah,
I'm all wrestling, baby, not part banker.
And so
it just happened. And so that's one of those things, like if you marry that with what Alan Watts says, like become an expert in your field. And Jamal said, he goes, you said the exact words, he said, you're an expert in what you do. Just keep doing that. People will find you. It was basically the same advice that when Alan Watts, I don't know what the lag between heard it, when it made sense to me. I was like, you know what? If anybody works at a job at this particular time, this is probably like 10 years ago, so I was looking at probably at 30-year mark in wrestling. Mm-hmm. If you stayed in one job for 30 years, you might own wherever you're working, or you're so high or in the company, or you are such an expert. If I worked in McDonald's for 30 years, guaranteed I'm owning some of these franchises. Right. Guaranteed I'm the trainer going around. Anywhere, you work at the bank for 30 years?
I spent 30 years in the industry, yeah.
Man, so I thought, you know what? All right. And it afforded me a flexible schedule. I did have a young child, and I want, my daughter Katya at the time, I have two now, Katya and Scarlett, but I did have a flexible schedule. I did love what I was doing. It wasn't financially rewarding at the particular time, and because so many things were happening, and the time was changing, and no one knew the time was going to change. Right. And it just did. So it married that idea of becoming an expert in your field. And I was like, you know what? I am an expert in my field, and I love what I do. I love to wrestle, and I don't do it for money. I actually do it because I'm happy. And you know what? A lot of things people do in their life don't make them happy, and they're kind of mean at home. I'd rather just be happy at home. And like I said this a few times before.
You travel quite a bit for wrestling, which most people won't.
I grew up with nothing. When I started high school, I was 98 pounds. We didn't have a phone. We didn't have a car. we're on food stamps, we have no money, we have nothing.
Yeah.
I came from nothing. I had great family support, I had great friends, I had great everything. But as far as from the tangible things, nothing. I had nothing. And so I know what it feels like to have nothing, and that's not that bad because I had lots of love. So I didn't realize actually how poor we were because I had an amazing family and friends and mentors and coaches. So I didn't realize how bad it was. And then later in life, I had some success financially in doing things, and I realized that this wouldn't even mean anything if I didn't have good friends and good family. And so the things, just things, you know, I like my Louis Vuitton and different things. But I look, first, before you finish, I said this to him when he first brought it to my attention. I apologized because but he would know, but it kept me on a course. He would say, hey, let's go to the banking industry. He would probably got me hired, and then I probably would have got fired, and then we probably lost our friendship because I would have been that banking place, be like, fuck this, F this bank. I can't take it no more, I gotta go.
You have, whatever transpired from that day was not intended for me to create adverse impact to you, but I'm glad it benefited you.
Well, it did, because it was like you said, Ben, you've been wrestling a long time, you're an expert, keep doing this, it'll be okay.
I think, you said it best. I think when you have an expertise, people will seek you out.
Yeah.
Then the money will come if that's what your ultimate goal is. If you have the expertise, people will seek you out. You have something to offer. And I don't say this just because you're here today, and like I said, I've known you for 14 years. I don't BS with you. You have something to offer these kids. You bring energy, you bring discipline, you bring structure, and then you bring connection with the parents, because the parents respect and admire you for what you're doing with the kids. And if you ever seen Kenny coach, I watch how he coaches these middle schoolers all the way to high school, college, all levels. And the parents admire the structure and discipline you bring. And when the kids are not listening to you, you can hear the parents, you gotta listen to Kenny, because ultimately no parent wants to mess with Kenny anyway. So
and they know I'll slap their kid, they want that because they want to slap their kid. That's the great thing about wrestling, is you can slap the kid and you're gonna be okay. Yeah. Because the parents want to slap their kids, so you kind of get permission.
Dude, you have been truly amazing. I'm gonna step up and correct. This is the thing with TikTok, is if it's inactive and you guys aren't liking, then it forces you to do this little puzzle thing, Kenny.
Oh, there we go.
And it verifies. I don't know how many people we've had, I can't even see it. But you have been truly amazing, dude. What time is it anyway? We've been at it for an hour and 15 minutes.
But I've been at it for 40 years, so we'll be here a little bit longer.
We could do multiple episodes. I would love to bring you back at some point.
Yeah, there's all different things, you know. I appreciate it. Like I said, that with Jamal, I had no idea what we were going to talk about. As a matter of fact, he sat down and said, "What we're talking about? If we're talking about something about me, I don't need to research myself. If we had to talk about some topic, dinosaurs, I might need to research, right? But
I'm breaking a sweat talking to you. I'm having my left arm over.
But it's like, I want to. It's Jamal was someone that that I looked up to too, because he was in the military. He started jiu-jitsu late, just like I did. He was in a professional world just like I was, and he's followed his passions, and he's doing his thing and doing mine, and we're able to connect through jiu-jitsu. And I see him as much as I see my own kids. I see, especially when we're training like 4 or 5 days a week when we're really hitting it hard. Now I probably see him 2-3 days a week. And just with that story I told you, it's funny, but it was a very turning point in my life. Not because he made it or I made it. It just so happened. I was looking for something, but I was a little bit more, not embarrassed, but I was like, I needed something because I didn't have something. And I needed a job that I needed to make some money, that things that were happening.
You have family, you had kids, dude. You needed to provide.
But I was providing, but it was just not where I wanted to be. Right. And it was just at a time, but he's like, hey, he goes, man, you've been wrestling so long, you're an expert in your field. You don't want to start over in banking. He said, you're an expert in wrestling, just keep wrestling. And I was thinking, no, I don't care. I will shovel horse duty so I can pay my rent, because that's what it was about at that particular time. And then when that wasn't an opportunity, of course I could have filled out an application, but that just put in my mind, like, you know what, man? At this particular time, I'm like 40 years old. what do I want to start over? If I wanted to be a stockbroker, I would have kept being it from when I was 28. And I was like, you know what, this is what I want to do. Like I said, now I just teach people how to flip people upside down. And I traveled the entire world. So one thing I didn't get on a plane for the first time ever until I was in college, one of my first national championships. We have no money for a plane. I told you we have a car. I had a bike. Lucky I even have that. So to fly, I flew when I was a freshman in college for the first time.
Right.
And then I remember when I was younger and people were talking about traveling, and I remember telling one girl I dated when I was in going to college, I hadn't been on a plane ever, talking about traveling. I was like, oh, I hate traveling. But I didn't even know what to hate. I just said it because I couldn't. So I never got to go anywhere. And she was coming back from Europe, and I was like, I don't want to travel. I like being at home like this. But I was saying, I felt kind of embarrassed that I couldn't travel. And when I started traveling, that's all I'm about now. I love to wrestle. I love my daughters. I love my horse. I love a lady. I love to teach.
Yeah.
And boy, I love to travel. And so now I get to wrestle all over the world. And I get to come up with t-shirt slogans.
Yay, Jamal.
Eat tacos. If it wasn't for Jamal could have gave me a job and made me the most miserable individual on earth.
It could have been.
And we'd be doing this Zoom, and I'd be in orange jumpers, DOC on the back. And I'd be like, Jamal, thanks, bro. Put me in this bank. I hate that place, so I end up going nuts.
And it's happened.
So there you go.
I will tell you that, one of the things from this conversation, this last piece here, people are closer to their success than they really think they are. It's just a matter of pushing forward.
Like to say, it's darkest before dawn, man.
That's right.
And you know what?
That's right.
If you have to be the master of your fate, someone else can't be. If someone puts you into that hole, that's a deep, dark hole. You might be a scary place. And when things and circumstance put you into a hole, you have to be comfortable in that hole. You should dig that hole deeper than anyone can put you. And it's going to be fucking dark. And you are going to have to drive through it. You're going to have to drive. Don't run away from the storm. You're going to be in the storm longer. You're going to have to face it head on with what your fears are, what your problems are, and go. And wrestling has taught me that.
Absolutely.
My coaches have taught me that. My opponents have taught me that. And that's, so I'd say I don't think I've come up with something new. I think I've taken everything was given to me. I've taken some of my experiences, packaged it up now I got the 2-volume set. I took what my parents gave me, my coaches gave me, and what I was, that was 1 volume. And then what I took from it, I'm passing it to you now, it's a 2nd volume. Now you'll take it, put your stuff to it, now it's a 3rd volume. So it's just going forward.
Yeah.
But, without great coaches, great family, great people around me, there's no way
You need that
to succeed. And when someone says you can do this on your own, nobody does it on their own. You can be alone without a girlfriend or a boyfriend or a kid but somebody is helping you unless you are on a deserted island. That's it.
Good call out.
That's it. Someone will help you, and if you need help, then learn how to say, I need some help.
Yes, because people want to help. You just need to be willing to ask.
Like I said, I asked for help, but not in the way I should. I should have said, Jamal, I need a job because I'm about to be broke and I got a kid. I think Jamal said, man, let's work something out.
Yeah.
But then I'd be in jail because I would have this shitty ass job.
I do want to.
Instead of just loving life, being all wrestling, I'd be in jail.
To give him your Elvis sign off.
Bull wrestling.
Boat wrestling, baby. So, Kenny, thank you, man. I really appreciate it. I do want to end with a quote because I think you mentioned some really good things. One that resonates with me. In our darkest moment, you said that stood out. In our darkest moment, when we think we've been buried, we've actually been planted. Right? When we think we've been buried, we've actually been planted. And so I want to thank you, man. I know you're a busy guy, and this was last minute. I texted him, I think, on Sunday or Friday, and I saw him on Monday in class, and he was like, I'll do it. And so I appreciate that.
Yeah, man, that's great. No problem.
I do want to have you come back, and hopefully I can get some of the UFC fighters. I'm going to work because with Gregory and hopefully Pedro at some point, because they were both coaches of ours, and so that would be awesome. Any final words for people listening on any of the streams?
Man, eat your vitamins, say your prayers. You want to be a Hulkamaniac.
This is coming from a guy who's not religious. Eat your vitamins, say your prayers.
Eat your tacos and drink American black tea.
And so his divine intervention from a religious guy that led him to the path of the foundation of Import Wrestling.
Yep.
Thank you, brother.
It's so crazy that it came from a church situation, not religious. But I'll tell you what, the work ethic is what's really important, and the hard work. You know, when you don't have motivation, you have to discipline. So
Absolutely. Thank you, Kenny. I
thank
appreciate
you very
man.
much. I appreciate it.
brother.
Thank you.
Thank you.